before we do roll call, everybody should know that we are being recorded. And roll call, please. Thank you.
All right. So, Commissioner White.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Amberman.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Hesseltine.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Callett.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jencock.
Present.
Thank you.
You're also with us, former Congressman David Jolly.
Commissioner Burnsworth.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellis. Commissioner Ellis, can you hear us?
I can't hear anybody talking now.
Okay, are you?
I'm really sorry. I can't hear anybody talking.
Okay, okay, we can hear you. Okay, so I'm gonna try to connect with you in a break and see if we can fix your audio. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Thank you. Chair Neary Strickland.
Present.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Zoberman.
Hineni, ready to serve.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Gunn.
I am here.
Thank you. Okay. All right, back to you, Chair Neary Strickland.
Thank you. And we want to welcome our, I guess we just have one student present, our new member, Morgan Ellis. I know she can't hear us, but
She can, yeah. I'm gonna try to take a break during one of the presentations and get her on and get her back online
okay.
because her audio is going in and out. She had us for a minute and then it went back out.
Okay, great. And Hannah Mancall is not with us tonight, I guess.
No, does not look like Hannah has joined us yet. I did speak with her, and she said she was going to be joining us, but she hasn't connected yet.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we have in front of us the minutes from the last meeting. It went out to you earlier, so I assume everyone had a chance to look it over. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Okay, I see a virtual hand up by Commissioner Amberman. Commissioner Amberman, your mic is open.
Thank you. I had a question first in regards to the minutes, just for clarification, and I'm glad to see the program is here. I see that for the very first time, we are noting the late arrival of commissioners into the meeting. It never happened that way. I mean, it always said that there was absences and that the commissioners attended. But for the first time, I see several names of commissioners that arrived late. And I'm concerned that that is taking place because a lot of commissioners have had difficulty joining, and you know, it kind of makes a precedent. So for clarification purposes, and so we know what to expect, I would like to ask that question before the minutes are approved, because if you know, if we can take that out of the minutes, you know, that would be a good thing. But anyway, I would like to have to hear that from Rod, if you don't mind.
Let me make sure I am not muted. Are y'all hearing me?
Yep, you're on. Yeah, I keep you unmuted, Ron, just in case you need to chime in anywhere.
Very good. I appreciate it. I think we could tweak the minutes a little bit to remove the word late. But I think what Dominique was doing is she said roll call of commissioners was taken. And then she mentions the commissioners who were not there at the time of the roll call. I think it could be that sentence, and I'm looking at it now, Commissioner Burnsworth, Gunn, and Orencia were absent at the time of roll call but arrived at the meeting late. I think we could rephrase that sentence to say Commissioners Burnsworth, Gunn, and Orencia arrived at the meeting after the roll call was taken, or something like that. I think it's absolutely right that people are doing the best they can, and because of technical difficulties, they may not have been online at 4:03. But if they're doing their best and they get in at 4:10, then that's good. So I think we could soften the tone of that sentence, and I would propose that we change the sentence to read that those three commissioners connected to the meeting after the roll call was taken. Connected to the meeting after the roll call was taken.
Thank you so very much. That's appreciated.
Sure.
And that's good with you, B. So with that change, we can entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Okay.
Second, anybody?
Raise your virtual hand if you like to second the motion.
There's a real hand up.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Rivera?
Yes, I'd like to second it.
Okay, all right. Any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes with the correction stating that Commissioner Burnsworth, Gunn, and Orencia connected to the meeting after roll call was taken? Let me check with our commissioners on the phones. Commissioner Zoberman?
Yes.
Any discussion on the motion on the table? Commissioner Zoberman?
Yeah, no. I go along.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
no discussion. Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Gunn, any discussion on the motion on the table?
No discussion, but it's appreciated.
All right, thank you. We have another person joining us on the phone. I want to identify this person. I think it might be Commissioner Cubine. Caller, can you identify yourself?
Yes, this is me, Tommy Cubine.
Okay, all right, and did you join when we were the motion that is on the table? Are you aware of that?
Was the motion about the minutes?
Yes.
Yes, I read the minutes and I approve.
Okay, we're just asking if there's any discussion.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to do a roll call vote for approval of the minutes with the correction that Commissioner Burnsworth, Gunn, and Orencio connected to the meeting after roll call was taken. All right. Commissioner White, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Amberman?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hesseltine?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Callett? Commissioner Callett?
Really tackle the coronavirus so that his legacy would not be the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people.
Commissioner Callett?
It's exactly what it is. I think that
Commissioner Callett, can you hear us? Are you still there? I think we're losing him. Okay. Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jenkott?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnsworth?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan, I think you still can't hear us. Oh, we can hear you now. Can you hear us?
I don't know what you're saying.
Oh,
process and transition of government that we always.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
okay. Rod, how should I handle her vote if she can't hear us? I'm sorry.
If you hear from her via email or some other way later today, and she said, I was saying yes, but you just couldn't hear me, then I think that counts.
Okay. Thank you, Rod. All right. Commissioner Taylor, your vote?
Approve.
Thank you. Chair Neary Strickland?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley, I see you have joined us. Commissioner Stanley, we are voting on the.
I approve. I've been here. I'm just
Okay.
showing up for some reason.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stanley. Commissioner Cubine?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Zoberman?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gunn?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Cubine, are you on with the phone and the computer?
Oh, I'll turn off the phone. Hallelujah.
Okay. Thank you. You can hang up the phone because you're on the computer. Okay. And I have another person joining us on the phone. Can you identify yourself, please?
Hannah Mancall, sorry, my laptop is not working.
Oh, okay. Hi, Hannah. Right now we're voting for a motion to approve the minutes correction stating that Commissioner Burnsworth, Gunn, and Orencio connected to the meeting after roll call was taken.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. So Hannah is here now with that, and Tommy is here now. So we have 1, 2, 18 yes for approval of the minutes with the correction that Commissioner Burnsworth, Gunn, and Orencio connected to the meeting after roll call was taken.
Thank you. Welcome, Hannah. You're on the phone, right?
I just unmuted her.
Oh, okay. Hannah, would you like to say anything? I know Morgan can't, but.
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I should say?
Just welcome. We'll get you, if you haven't already gotten your packet, we'll get that to you. And for everyone who did not get to see our legal advisor give a overview of the legalities that we should be following, I think he's on deck now to do so. So I'm looking forward to hearing it, and you are being recorded, so we'll have you now for posterity. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Sylvia just noted, we're going to hopefully keep this portion of the recorded meeting so we can provide it to new members as an orientation for them. So with that in mind, I ask that you keep your questions until the end. And one other thing I'll point out, during this talk, I'm going to speak about an individual member participating remotely in an HRC meeting when the quorum is present in the room. Those of you who have been with the HRC for a while know that we did that last year. I am not going to talk about the type of meeting we're having right now, which is a completely virtual meeting, because this type of meeting that we're having now, we're only able to have it because of the COVID pandemic. And I'm really hopeful that this pandemic is going to end, but that we can use this video post-COVID. So let me get going. My name is Rod Ingram. I'm a deputy city attorney. And for the past 2 decades, I've had the privilege of serving as legal counsel to the city's Human Rights Commission. I'm going to provide a brief orientation regarding the HRC, and I will discuss the city code sections that set forth the commission's composition and duties, as well as attendance requirements and terms of service, the HRC's bylaws, which supplement the city code provisions, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and how its open meeting and public record provisions apply to the HRC, the State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Act, and finally, I'll address press relations, sponsorship procedures, and the reporting of volunteer hours. Let's start with the City Code. Article 26 of Chapter 2 of the City Code addresses the Human Rights Commission. It sets forth the number of members and how they are appointed. It includes a term limit of no more than 3 consecutive 3-year terms, but there is a provision whereby a member could be appointed to additional terms under certain circumstances. The code imposes an attendance requirement that is shared by other city boards and commissions. A member may accumulate no more than 3 unexcused absences in a calendar year. Absences will be excused if necessitated by personal illness, death, or other unusual circumstances. And unusual circumstances would not be a trip to work or a family vacation. You may miss meetings for those reasons, but not more than 3 per year. An example of an unusual circumstance would be, for example, you left Richmond at noon in hopes of arriving at the HRC meeting at 4, but you're stuck in tunnel traffic through no fault of your own. If you know in advance that you're unable to attend a meeting but would like to participate electronically via conference call or other technologies such as video conferencing, let the chair and Dominique, our staff liaison, know well in advance of the meeting, and staff will attempt to accommodate your request. If you participate in a meeting remotely, that will not be counted as an absence, but you're limited to 2 remote participations per calendar year unless you have a medical reason for participating remotely. If you have a medical reason, there's no cap on the number of times you can participate remotely. The City Code sets forth the duties and functions of the Human Rights Commission: to serve and as an advisory agency to the City Council, to conduct educational and informational programs, to serve as a forum for the discussion of human rights issues, to conduct studies, and to propose solutions for the improvement of human relations in the city. And the HRC, through its staff liaison, provides assistance to persons who believe their rights have been violated by referring those persons to the appropriate federal, state, or local agency that can best address the concern. Let's move on to the bylaws. Among other things, the bylaws address the election of officers and their duties, the frequency of HRC meetings, and the number of members needed to constitute a quorum, which is a majority of the current membership. And also, this is very important, the fact that a majority vote of all members of the HRC, and not just a majority of the quorum that happens to be present at a given meeting, is necessary for any official action of the HRC, which means that for any vote taken by the HRC, an affirmative vote of a majority of the current membership is needed to approve the motion. Let's now consider the requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. The Act, which is often referred to by the acronym FOIA, or FOIA, governs citizen access to public records and meetings of public bodies. A public record is any writing or recording of any kind that's used by city employees, officials, or appointees, including HRC members, in the transaction of public business, or with respect to HRC members, in the transaction of HRC business. Minutes, emails, even if sent to your personal email address, text messages, handwritten notes, and this video recording of this meeting. All of these are public records which are subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. Any Virginia citizen or any member of the press may make a FOIA request for public records, and the city is legally required to respond to that request within 5 business days. Because of that tight timeline, I strongly urge you to forward to the HRC liaison any email or other communication you receive in your capacity as an HRC member, if the staff liaison hasn't already been copied on the email, or if she isn't the person who sent it to you. You aren't required to take that proactive step, but doing so will benefit you and provide you with peace of mind. If city staff informs you that a FOIA request has been received for HRC records, rather than scrambling to find old emails and other records on that tight deadline, wouldn't you prefer to be able to say, every public record I have concerning the HRC was either provided to me by city staff, or I previously forwarded that correspondence or record to staff? If you can say that, there's nothing else you'll have to do in response to that FOIA request. A FOIA request does not have to be in writing, and the requester is not required to cite the act when making the request. If a Virginia resident or a member of the press asks you for a public record, she has made a FOIA request, whether she realizes it or not, and our obligation to respond to that request begins immediately. Accordingly, if somebody asks you for a public record and you aren't able to promptly provide the requester with that record, she might ask you for the minutes from the last meeting. If you got the minutes, forward her the email and we're done. But if she asks you for records that you don't have access to, please contact staff as soon as possible so we can process that request and ensure that we comply with the Act's strict requirements for timely responses. The Freedom of Information Act also applies to meetings of public bodies, including the HRC, as well as any HRC subcommittee, task force, or advisory body. The Act defines the term meeting as any gathering of 3 or more members of a public body, such as the HRC, or a majority of any subcommittee. So if the HRC appoints a 3-member subcommittee, any gathering of 2 or more members, 2 would be a majority, would constitute a public meeting. We are required to provide public notice of all meetings of the HRC and its subcommittees. Meetings must be held at a location that the public can attend. Conference calls with more than 3 members are prohibited, as is simultaneous electronic chatting by 3 or more members, although there is an exception during states of emergency, such as the COVID pandemic. The HRC has adopted a policy in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act that allows a member to participate in an HRC meeting remotely via telephone or other electronic means, but such participation is governed by strict procedures, and facilitating such participation can be logistically challenging. So if, as I mentioned earlier, you know you're going to be absent from an HRC meeting, but you'd like to participate in the meeting by phone or electronically, please inform the chair and the staff liaison as soon as possible so the necessary preparations can be taken. HRC meetings are open to the public. Under very limited circumstances, the Act allows the HRC to meet in closed session, excluding the public. An example includes the ability to meet in closed session to discuss Human Rights Award nominees. Strict procedures must be followed to convene in closed session, and I try to always be there for those meetings to help ensure that those procedures are followed. Next, let's discuss the Virginia State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Act. Because of the nature of the Human Rights Commission, it's an advisory agency, it's unlikely that you would have a legal conflict of interest in your capacity as an HRC member. The Conflicts Act concerns a public employee or an official's financial interest in business or land that is the subject of a government contract or transaction. The HRC generally doesn't enter into contracts, and purchasing decisions are usually made by staff. But if, for example, the HRC were to vote on who should cater the HRC awards banquet, if your spouse works for a catering company, you should abstain on voting on whether your spouse's employer should receive the catering contract. The bottom line is, if you ever think you might have a legal conflict with respect to an HRC vote, ask me or just abstain. It's never problematic to abstain if you aren't certain whether you have the right to vote. But if you'll contact me in advance, or if you'll ask me in the meeting while we're doing it, I will do my best to give you good legal advice so you can comply with the Act. And now the final 3 topics. HRC members wear many hats. You are community leaders, volunteers, business owners, taxpayers, and parents, among many other things. If the press contacts you about an HRC matter, the best practice is to refer the caller to the chair, who serves as the spokesperson for the HRC. You do not, however, sacrifice your First Amendment rights to express your opinions on matters of public concern merely because you have volunteered to help your city by serving on the commission. If you are contacted by a reporter and you want to share your own personal perspective, go ahead and do so. Just make clear that you are speaking for yourself and not on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. Next, the HRC has written sponsorship procedures. If at some point in the future, the HRC decides to solicit sponsorships for example, in support of the HRC's annual awards banquet, you would follow those written sponsorship procedures. Finally, please report your volunteer hours on the form provided to you by staff. Volunteers like you save the city millions of dollars each year, and we want to make sure we track all the good work that you're doing on behalf of the HRC and our community. Thank you for your service to the city, and if you are a new member of the HRC, welcome aboard. Okay, do y'all have any questions for me? Luis.
Commissioner Rivera, I see your virtual hand is up. Commissioner Rivera, your mic is now open.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand this fully as far as meetings between commissioners. Because I see a potential problem for stifling of communication between us. But in any case, you mentioned, Rod, that if two commissioners gather together or speak together, that is considered a public meeting.
I may have gone through that too quickly. The general rule is 3 or more members. And for the HRC, which has lots and lots of members, that's the rule, 3. But if we happen to have a HRC subcommittee and the subcommittee only had 3 members, only in that circumstance where we've got a committee with 3 or less members, then if you've got 2, then that's a quorum. And it's only in that very rare circumstance where we've got a 3-person subcommittee that 2 would be the trigger.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Rivera. Commissioner Stevens, I see your virtual hand is up. Commissioner Stevens, your mic is now open.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back about the volunteer hours because I do a lot of volunteer work and some of it crosses over, so I'm not sure how that works, and haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, I'm not the expert on volunteer hours, but I think if the thing you are doing is something that you did prior to becoming an HRC member, then although that is benefiting the community and although that may be in furtherance of an HRC goal, that sounds like something that you're doing not because you're an HRC member, but because you've always done that thing. But if you are attending a meeting as a representative of the HRC, or if you are participating in a function that's an HRC function, if it's tied to the HRC, if we can tie it to the HRC to your status as an HRC member, then that's the type of hours that you would report. Does that help any, or do you want to give me an example?
Well, it somewhat helps. Like I said, I've been working with the homeless for quite a few years.
Right.
And then I go to the meetings now wearing a couple different hats when I go to the meetings, and I clarify when I'm speaking, what I'm speaking on. If I'm speaking for human rights, I say I'm speaking as Human Rights Commissioner. If I'm speaking on my nonprofit that works with the homeless, then I say I'm speaking on their behalf. So I kind of cross-reference the meetings, but I wasn't sure, should I disclose those hours or not?
Well, I think if you're at a meeting and you do speak up and you say, I'm now wearing my HRC hat. At our last HRC meeting, we talked about this topic, and let me share what the HRC had to say. Well, then you're doing the work of the HRC. So it may be that these meetings you're talking about, 1 month you do talk about the HRC stuff, and then it would be legitimate to report that as an HRC volunteer time. But if you sit through that particular meeting and you don't say anything about the HRC, and the times you do talk are in your different capacities. But let me also say this. We track these hours in order to inform our city council, city leaders, and the citizens of the value of the work that our volunteers are doing. No auditor is going to come in and say, oh, wait, you were attending the meeting for HRC, but you also happened to attend it for another. I think use your best judgment with the framework that I've given. And if in doubt, don't count it. But if you can make a explanation that passes the red face test, that this was a legitimate HRC, you were doing the work of the HRC, then go ahead and count it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stevens. I see a virtual hand up by Commissioner Amberman. Commissioner Amberman, your mic is open.
Yes, thank you, Rod, for giving that explanation. And just to expand a little bit on what you're saying, we have been working on structuring our Human Rights Commission's work in committees, task forces, etc. And I think that that actually helps all of us clarify whether the meetings that we are attending are official meetings of the Human Rights Commission, or whether you have been appointed by the chair to participate in a meeting with another body, whatever it is. So I think that that is a good guidance. I think that we are going to be finishing that structure. And I just wanted to share with my colleagues that, check if you are attending a meeting and you are a member appointed by the chair to represent us in that other meeting, then that is a good guideline. So anyway, I wonder if the chair maybe or yourself can address that, because I think that that has been the confusion, but I'm very proud of all the work that we have done to clarify exactly, what is an official business of the Human Rights Commission, and because we do a lot of volunteer in other ways.
I agree with what you've said. Sylvia?
Yeah, as do I. And I think we have one last retreat meeting. I don't know when that's going to be, but that's going to cover a lot of the liaison work so that it'll be further clarified. I have a really, I don't want to bring this up, but I will. There's and I don't know the name of it, Ginger, maybe you can help me. The collaborative table, that round table for the General Assembly, when everyone, more than 2 commissioners usually attend this meeting, at which time I think Human Rights Commission name comes up, because I think it would come up during the time when they were saying we are also putting that forward to be considered into our legislative packet. How is that, if there's more than 2 of us and we're attending and we are addressing some human rights, does that have to be announced?
Okay, this is the tricky question that comes up quite frequently. It seems to me that if we know in advance that 3 or more members of the HRC are going to attend a meeting and that they are going to talk about HRC business, that we have an obligation to provide public notice. And hopefully the group that you're speaking of is one that would allow members of the public to be there. So if you are going to participate in such a meeting, you think it's likely that there are going to be 3 or more HRC members, you let Dominique know as soon as possible. And she's going to get the notice out 3 days in advance. So as soon as possible, but no later than 4 days before the thing. She will get the notice out, and the notice will say 3 or more members of the Human Rights Commission may attend and then they'll give the name of the thing and the contact information and how you could go. If we do that, we're covered. Let me give a different example. You're at something else. There are you're at a wedding reception and you see 2 other HRC members there. Y'all haven't broken the law. We don't need to give notice. Y'all can talk about anything in the world. Just don't talk about HRC business. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I see Beatrice.
I see a virtual hand up by Vice Chair Jenkott. Vice Chair Jenkott, your mic is open.
Thank you. This is Ginger. Yes, to clarify a little bit more, those of us that attend the Legislative Collaborative Table, we are not there representing HRC. We are each representing our own areas that we work with. It may be stated, and Teresa will often state, this is what we have given to City Council, but we don't talk about it. I'll talk about LGBT, Beatrice will talk about Latino legislation, Tommy will talk about mental health legislation. So we are dealing in our own areas there. We're not there to discuss HRC business. Thank you.
Okay. I am okay with that, with one tiny caveat. I'm okay with Teresa mentioning, oh, the HRC looked into this. What I can't have is another HRC member then discussing with Teresa, oh, didn't we discuss something? No, now I got two HRC members talking about HRC business. I can't have that.
Yeah, and that does not happen.
Very good.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jenka. I see a virtual hand up by Commissioner Amberman. Commissioner Amberman, your mic is open.
Thank you. And the other issue of discussion that we had last time was also about concerns that some of our members had in regards to the issues brought forth. And, people were discussing, well, we usually advise City Council about proposals that we want to introduce in the city package. And just for clarification, none of us brings that forth unless, there is just informational. And another thing is, like Ginger said, we all are representing our individual organizations. So I never mentioned HRC whatsoever. The one thing that we then need to discuss, and the chair needs to point, it would be if the Human Rights Commission officially participate, then there has to be a representative that comes just to speak on behalf of the Human Rights Commission and inform the rest of the organizations what is it that the HRC is supporting with the approval of City Council. And I just wanted to mention that, and I just think that it is a good relationship in that organization, given the fact that many human rights organizations work in partnership to inform one another what are the issues of concern. So it serves two ways. The avenue is for us to maybe have a representative there that will share what is it that was approved by City Council, that the city will be speaking on behalf of human rights at the General Assembly. And then secondly, for the person representing the Human Rights Commission to listen the concerns to the rest of the communities and informed, because I think it is our duty to make sure that City Council, by us, is informed of the issues of concern in the community at large.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Amberman. Okay, did any other commissioners have any questions or for Rod or anything to say? I'm going to check with our commissioners on the phone. Commissioner Zoberman, did you have any questions? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Khaled?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I don't see any other virtual hands up. Just want to take one moment to mention recognize that Commissioner Orencio has joined us. Commissioner Orencio? Hello, Commissioner Orencio? Okay, I'm not sure where he is.
Hopefully that's a movie.
Okay. So I don't see any virtual hands up, so I'm going back to you, Chair Mary Strickland.
Okay. Thank you very much, Attorney Ingram. You're always a blessing for us, and I appreciate you more than you know. We all do. I just wanted to quickly say that we, at the beginning of roll call, we didn't say that our liaisons were here, but we have one from VBPD, and we have Dottie Holtz from School Board, Dr. Parrott from schools, and Regina from staff. I appreciate you guys coming. And now I think that the UBPD, we asked them to come back and give us a presentation on their CIT officers and the process.
Deputy Chief Sakaro, your mic is open.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners.
I mean, this is, you guys are doing it how?
Hello, Deputy Chief. Do you have a presentation that you need to share?
We do.
Okay, let me give you those permissions. Hold for 1 second. Okay, you are all set now. You should be able to go ahead and share your presentation.
Okay, so I wanted to say good afternoon to everybody and appreciate the Madam Chair to put us on the agenda to give the body an update on the CIT efforts. In the room, I have Captain Billy Zelms, who's going to be assuming the role as the liaison for the commission in the short term, and I have Sergeant James Gordon, who works out of the operations division, and he is our point person for our CIT program. And I have Ms. Cheryl St. John, who is a clinician with Department of Human Services that has agreed to help us present. So I'd like to introduce James and Cheryl to handle this presentation for us.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you guys once again. We gave you guys a update of probably about 1.5 years ago, and we've been moving forward since then. So to get started, we're just going to move along. It's going to talk to you a little bit about the growth of our program, and it's going to begin with a timeline, kind of when we started it to where we are now. The timeline is just going to be a brief overview. We're really going to focus on the last 3 years and the initiatives that we've made there. We created the program in 2008. It was designed after the Memphis model of a voluntary-based program for CIT, which is the way that we interact and treat the individuals that are in mental health crisis and trying to get them to the services that they need. In 2009, we've seen the benefits of this, and as we grew as an organization, we implemented it into our academy. It was a mental health first aid block that we implement to all of our recruits that are coming on to the Virginia Beach Police Department, and that began in 2009. In 2009 also, we branched out to our ECCS folks, their 911 dispatch, and helped them create their own program for all dispatchers who are receiving the calls, because they're initially that first line that is receiving this call, either from the individual that's in crisis or a loved one, family member, or bystander. In 2010, we established the CIT Assessment Center. And what that assessment center is a place where we're able to bring an individual and transfer custody of that individual, as well as for them to be assessed to determine whether they need further evaluation or committal. That was done in partnership with Virginia Beach Psychiatric Center. And it is one of very few that is actually partnered with a private agency. In 2010 and 2011, we received the Human Rights Award from the Commission. In 2011, we saw the impact of the program and instituted the CIT Light to all police officers that are on the department. So even those officers that may not have volunteered to take part of the class in 2008, or the recruits, if they were hired on prior to the 2009 implementation into the academy, we wanted to make sure that everybody on the Virginia Beach Police Department had some form of CIT training. So in 2011, we implemented the CIT Light program, which was a full day training of CIT, what it was, mental health awareness, and de-escalation to everybody on the department. In 2011, we also hosted the CIT International Conference here in Virginia Beach. So that was a great honor that we were able to do. 2012 and 13, we sponsored 3 CIT interface conferences in collaboration with NAMI, Anita Lighthouse, and Department of Human Services. 2014, we received an award for the CIT Officer of the Year Award in 2014 and 15. One was for Captain Shannon Wichendall, and the other one was for NPO Eli Klein. 2017, we implemented our CIT, and this is where we're going to start narrowing down and getting into more detail as the PowerPoint goes forward. We implemented our CIT Supplemental Unit. In 2018, we implemented a mobile CoResponder team. And in 2019, we brought in EMS into that program as well and expanded the hours. And then in 2020, we're happy to announce that we just launched our post-crisis intervention, post-crisis follow-up program. And also in 2020, we received the CIT International Law Enforcement Executive of the Year Award as well. So as I alluded to, this is a little bit about our training and what we provide to our officers. We conduct 4 40-hour trainings a year. And this is open to not only Virginia Beach Police Department, but also the Sheriff's Department, State Police, Probation, Parole, Animal Control, various agencies around the area. We've mentored programs since our induction and helped them develop their programs, such as the Norfolk Police Department, Portsmouth Police Department, Region University Fire, BB EMS. We actually just hosted our first all Virginia Beach EMS CIT class, and that was in partnership with Emergency Services and the Police Department. CIT officers and 911 dispatchers represented multiple CIT international conferences. So we've been asked, we've submitted and presented on several different topics across the country on our program and our growth and how we've been able to advance our program. Hosted 5 statewide 8-hour CIT advanced trainings, one as recent as last year, with actually the creator of CIT. He came down and provided an advanced training for us at our Law Enforcement Training Academy, and we opened that up to the entire region. Right here locally within our department, we've trained approximately 400 officers. They've been trained in CIT 40, and that is the extended version of CIT. Of course, all of our officers have some form of CIT training. And we also try to incorporate that type training into our in-service groups, in-service trainings throughout the year periodically as well, whether it's disability awareness or things of that nature. On our department, we, again, seen the impact of the CIT training and the implementation of it. So we, the chief made it a point to make certain positions mandated that they have the CIT 40 training, the extended training. And those are up there, the likes of our SWAT team, our hostage negotiation team, SROs, we're in our schools, our warrant and fugitive unit, our OCOP unit, which is our oceanfront community policing unit. And they all have to be trained in CIT 40 if they want to be on those units. And those units were picked in particular because of their high propensity to interact with individuals that are in crisis. And we felt that it was necessary that they had that extended training to benefit them in those situations. Like I said, all 782 of our officers have some form of the CIT training we discussed. This slide really talks about kind of our numbers from 2018 to 2019, from October 4th. So it kind of gives you a year snapshot of the calls for service that we have responded to, and how many of those are CIT related. And then it also breaks it down to the amount of time that we spend on those calls. It's something that does take up quite a bit of time when these calls do go out. And that's something that we encourage our officers, that they have all the time that they need to make sure that case is resolved appropriately. So this kind of breaks it down by our precincts as far as which precincts are the busiest. And you can see that there's over 3,200 calls for service that we responded to as far as our police officers throughout last year, and spending over 11,000 hours on CIT related calls for service. The average time is about 3 hours and 38 minutes, but I can tell you that a lot of these calls do go significantly longer than that. But there are a couple of calls that are shorter than that kind of balances out. And we can get into a little bit about that as we move forward, as why some of them take longer than others. So 2017, this is kind of really where we wanted to start narrowing down on some advancements that we've made on our department. And we're always learning, or always looking to continue to grow and develop our program to be the best that it can be. In 2017, we saw the need, and under Deputy Chief Zucchero's leadership, implemented our CIT Supplemental Unit. And this unit is a fully trained CIT certified group of individuals who come in on an overtime basis to respond to nothing but CIT calls for service. If there's not an active CIT call for service that is occurring, they actively look for calls that may be CIT related, and they try to go and help out where they can. And what this does is this improves our response to the individuals that are living with mental illness, who are in crisis, and the response and what they get. This also frees up the officers that are not CIT certified, and they're able to answer other calls while we have the appropriate personnel on scene to answer the call that is CIT related there. And again, with this program, we're able to build working relationships with emergency services and other key stakeholders that are involved in this process. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in the ECO and TDO process, and we are just one of those parts. But it brings familiarity with the officers that are working this detail, as well as the emergency services personnel that are involved in the process as well. So in 2018, this is what we had just started. I believe last time we briefed you guys. This is our mobile CoResponder team. And it was late 2018 when we implemented it. And that's kind of the mission of it up there. In service to those who live with mental health or other issues that result in behavioral crisis, the mobile CoResponder team provides an expedited response to the scene, ensures safety, makes an accurate and compassionate assessment of needs, develops a plan of accomplishing the treatment, screens the individual in crisis as required, and expedites the transportation of the individual in crisis to a treatment facility. This program in and of itself, and we'll break down the numbers in the next couple slides, has been extremely successful, with a 72% success rate in reduction of recidivism of individuals that are seen by this unit in particular. 72% of the time, we do not have another encounter with them in a crisis manner. So that is a huge success for this program. We're looking to expand this as well as continue to grow to make as big an impact as we can with individuals that live with mental illness. So these are some of the numbers that our mobile CoResponder team has been able to respond to. So just over 1,100 calls for service. And it gives you a breakdown of kind of where each of those ended up in the end. Some of them did not meet criteria and refused some of the services that we were able to provide for them, while others were referenced to voluntary inpatient treatment, crisis stabilization, and things of that nature. By deferring some of these folks to some of these services that are available to them, it really is going to free up the bed load that is lacking in the mental health process. So we're really trying to divert as many as we can, but also making sure that they receive the appropriate services that they need. With the mobile CoResponder team, and you've seen it probably on some of the pictures in the previous slide, it's where we actually partner with emergency services and we ride together. And we've been doing it since 2018. And these are those same numbers, just put out in a pie graph for those of you that may prefer that method. But we ride together. We respond to the scene together, police and emergency services, and the emergency services personnel, once the scene is secure, is able to create that on-scene assessment and expediting that process and diverting them to the appropriate care needed for that individual. They're the medical professionals in that stance, not the police. So once the scene is secure, we kind of take a back seat and then let them proceed with the appropriate treatment. In 2019, we were able to bring in emergency services, EMS into the MCRT process, and to really start some in-the-field medical clearances. As you guys are aware, right after late 2019 coming into 20, COVID hit. So this has severely impacted our ability to do in-the-field medical clearance with EMS. So it has slowed that down, and we're hoping, as most, once this COVID crisis is over, we can kind of get back into that, and we can get EMS back involved a little bit more, doing more of those in-the-field medical clearances. We were also able to expand our hours in 2019 of this program because we saw the early on success. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to captivate as many people as possible in the amount of time that we could to receive this. So in 2020, like I stated before, one of our deputy chiefs was received the Law Enforcement Executive of the Year Award from CIT International. In 2020, we also deployed our mobile crisis stabilization team. And this is really just goes to our partnership of all the stakeholders that are involved and always wanting to improve our program. So with the mobile crisis stabilization team, it's a partnership between Human Services and the Police Department. It's basically to provide follow-up services to individuals that are in need. So once they're discharged, this program is kind of designed for us, which is led by emergency services, to go out to these individuals to make sure that they are aware of all the services that are available to them, and to make sure that they are receiving those services or help them enroll and help them get onto these services to prevent them from going back into crisis. We would rather to interact with them while they're stable and to keep them stable and prevent the crises from occurring. With that, these are some of the goals of the outreach group. We're going to bridge the gap between mental health and law enforcement. It's going to assist law enforcement with the difficult mental health related calls for service, having the emergency services there, as well as the post-crisis follow-up, and help prevent and divert the situations from escalating. We're going to identify and assist individuals and families that are in need. And again, this is all led by emergency services. They're going to create the list of the people that they feel is most appropriate and that could benefit the most from these type services. And reduce the repeat calls for service of the same individuals. It's that recidivism rate of keeping individuals into the community and keeping them productive into the community and preventing them from going back into crisis. Increase officer safety, as well as provide the right intervention at the right time. And that's probably the main key around all of our CIT approaches, is providing that right intervention at the right time, and enhance the level of availability of services provided in the community. So none of this can be done at all without partnerships. And we are one part in that, and we recognize that. So we rely heavily on emergency services and their partnership, as well as Beach Psych, Virginia Beach General, and a wide variety of other individuals that are involved in this process as well. And none of it could be done if we weren't all willing to work together to accomplish this. So at this point, I'm going to turn the PowerPoint over to Cheryl St. John with Emergency Services, and then she will kind of bring you guys up to speed on the emergency services side of how we work together and what their role is.
Thank you, Sergeant Gordon. Really appreciate that. All right. So emergency services, mental health emergency services, we've been in existence. We are the Department of Human Services Behavioral Health. We handle behavioral health crises. We are the CSB, Community Services Board. So for some of you folks that maybe don't live in Virginia Beach or work outside of Virginia Beach, as you know, every CSB in Virginia has to have an emergency services crisis intervention unit. And for us in Virginia Beach, this is who we are. We're clinicians that are master level or licensed clinicians that are trained by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to perform the function of a pre-admission screening clinician. Meaning in Virginia, we are the only clinicians that are certified to perform that evaluation for involuntary hospitalization. But not all that we do is involuntary. So I just thought I would throw that up there to let you know that our primary service is to provide crisis intervention for all individuals, all ages, the very young to the very old, including folks with intellectual or developmental disabilities, as well as mental illnesses and substance use disorders and other. Because not everyone in crisis has a formal mental health or substance use diagnosis. We need to understand that. So individuals seeking crisis services can be seen same day, talk to a clinician immediately by calling our 24/7 crisis line at 757-385-0888. And this number has been in existence for more than 30 years. And so we answer this number, rain, shine, every single day. We are not 911, but we are behavioral health crisis intervention. So our emergency services crisis line, as I just said, is available 24/7. It could be the individual themselves having a crisis to give us a call, but lots of times we're getting referrals from many different people. It could be a self-referral, but it could be a CPS worker that's on scene and is concerned because either the parent of the child is suffering from a mental illness or a behavioral health disorder and they need an immediate intervention, so they're calling us to consult. It could be family members that are living with the loved one, or they're getting a call from their loved one that either live here in Virginia Beach, or the family could live out of state, but they're receiving these calls and they're recalling us, trying to get help for their loved ones. Could be neighbors, employers, concerned citizens, Of course, we receive referrals from hospitals and magistrates, again, to provide that evaluation for involuntary civil commitment. Also working with our police department in Virginia Beach, they are part of our crisis intervention team. And we recognize that because of the way the code is written in Virginia, we could not perform our function and evaluate people if we did not have somebody to actually assume custody of them temporarily while they're receiving that evaluation. So thank you for that. Of course, we do work with the sheriff's office as well in the correctional center. There are many inmates who get the call from sheriffs and deputies and other jail medical, and they need to be expedited to go to the state hospital under an emergency treatment order because they are not able to be in the community, but they do need help. So we'll get that referral and we'll facilitate that evaluation under a separate code. So anybody that needs information on emergency services or behavioral health or crisis intervention can call our 24/7 line. Even if they're unsure, if it rises to that level, they'll be able to consult with a clinician. And so we're really proud of that in our response time. Our highest call volume, believe it or not, is in red there, is Tuesday between 8 and 4, not Friday night, not the weekends, not holidays usually. It usually is on a Tuesday. And as we alluded to, that's how we try to staff our mobile CoResponder team. So that's why it's Monday through Friday from noon to 10 a.m. That's where the bulk of our calls are coming in. But oddly enough, Tuesday is the time where we get the most calls. And that's usually because the weekends ended. On Monday, folks are finally winding down, and then they notice, family members notice, or others notice that they're in crisis on Tuesday. So just a little. Crisis calls, when we take the crisis calls, the individual who calls the crisis line is immediately transferred to an ES clinician. So that call that comes in is answered by a crisis clinician, again, 24/7. We have to ask a lot of questions because of the person in crisis. We need to know, where is the individual located? Is it the individual themselves that are calling in crisis, or is it a family member, is it a police officer? Who's calling on behalf of that person? What is the nature of the crisis? Where are they located at? Are they suicidal or homicidal? Or is there another reason for the call? Because it may be that the person just, what we call, is unable to care for themselves, right? Due to their capacity at that point in time. We also need to know, are there any weapons in the home? If the person calls 911 first and we get the call transferred from 911 or somebody else in the community, they've already asked those questions, we still do follow up for that. And any witnesses that witness any high-risk behavior, we normally ask them to complete a petition. Talk a little bit more about the civil commitment process and our role as court liaison in a minute. But if the individual is at risk and we have somebody that's a concerned party and they're willing to step forward and act as a petitioner, we'll ask them that they go to the magistrate's office. If they need to have an emergency custody order issued by a magistrate, we can do that. We can assist with that process. And so individuals can be transported to the CIT Assessment Center. But now because of COVID, as Sergeant Gordon said, unfortunately, most folks need that COVID clearance. They need a COVID screening, which we cannot do at our CIT Assessment Center or at Virginia Beach site. And so they must go to the emergency room in order to get that screening facilitated. So emergency services locations, where are we? We are site-based. We have an administrative office right now over at Witch Duck Annex. Again, prior to COVID, we were staffing that fully. That office, though, was only open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The bulk of our clinicians work out of our CTAC, our CIT Assessment Center. That's inside Virginia Beach site. So it's a facility that's inside the hospital. We are 7 days a week, 24/7, holidays, always, we are there. And because of our contract with Virginia Beach Psych and Virginia Beach Police, we are required to man that assessment center 24/7. So there's always a clinician there. However, due to COVID, we are doing some telehealth. So we have additional clinicians that are available. Again, they're going to answer that phone call, but they're also going to be available via video, Zoom, or WebEx. Mobile assessments are provided at all agencies, schools, hospitals. Again, prior to COVID, there were some restrictions there. We're not allowed to, in many cases, go in. Certainly not into assisted living or nursing homes at this point because of COVID. But prior to COVID, we would go on site and be there for that assessment. And emergency services clinicians also ride along with police, as Sergeant Gordon stated, because we are part of that mobile CoResponder team. Part of the crisis assessment, our crisis assessment, again, has to be completed by a certified pre-admission screening clinician. And the purpose of the assessment can be many different things. It's first and foremost, if they're under custody by police or if the magistrate has issued a judicial emergency custody order, we have to make sure that they don't meet the criteria for involuntary hospitalization. However, there's many different dispositions that can occur. If the person does not meet criteria for involuntary civil commitment, we're going to make sure that that person gets the services that they need. And it could be voluntary hospitalization, or it could be others, such as a referral to crisis stabilization. It could be center-based to Pathways, which is our community residential crisis stabilization program, and that program assists people that are withdrawn from substances, but they're still voluntary for treatment. We ask a whole lot of questions, and I'm not going to go into each one as I already talked a little bit about that, but we do evaluate risk factors, some of the factors that put them at risk, but they also have protective factors. So just because somebody's high risk, if they have enough support, they're voluntary, and we can wrap services around them and keep them in the community safely, and it's a viable safety plan, we're going to go ahead and do that. As I said, most of the assessments occur at the CTAC, but also now because of COVID through the emergency room. And that does take a little bit of time for the medical clearance. The amount of time for an assessment depends on the individual. Everybody is treated as an individual, whether or not they are diagnosed with a mental health disorder formally. They may not have a formal mental health diagnosis or a chronic mental health diagnosis, but they could be suffering severe stressors that lead them to exhibiting suicidal or homicidal ideation. It varies. The evaluation varies. It depends on what's going on, the context, the additional collateral information we're receiving from police or from the hospital. And clinicians also retain and talk to other family members and collateral contacts to make sure that we're not missing something in the bigger picture, because we need to know what level of care to refer them to. It could be community-based crisis stabilization, or it could just be some short-term crisis counseling. But we're going to make sure that they get what they need, because everybody is seen as an individual, regardless of their disability.
I apologize for interrupting, but could you move a little closer to the mic or bring the mic a little closer to you?
I can. All right. Sure. Absolutely. Let's see is that better?
Much better. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So disposition and treatment, we have a little statistics at the bottom of the screen. So again, the disposition for an emergency custody evaluation, it can vary. We may release the person from custody to develop a safety plan with them and follow up for outpatient services. And that's where that community crisis stabilization is really helpful. We have community-based crisis stabilization with the Department of Human Services Behavioral Health Division. We've had that since 2012, but our partnership with PD is new, and we're going to be able to outreach more people, because we find even if people have the phone number for same-day access and can get same-day services in Virginia Beach, many people are hesitant to pick the phone up. I think they really need that hand-holding, and that's where the crisis stabilization clinician will come into play and try to outreach that person and talk to them in a very person-centered manner to try to see if there's anything else we need to do for them. Again, to reduce the recidivism for hospitalization and, of course, incarceration or leading to another crisis. We can also do a voluntary admission to that community, that crisis stabilization unit, such as Pathways. We have Pathways Center in Virginia Beach. It used to be known as Recovery Center. It's an excellent program. It's a residential program, but it's voluntary. The person has to agree. It's an unlocked facility. That person can leave at any time, but they receive treatment there for substance use disorders as well as mental health, what we call co-occurring disorders. So we do refer to that CSU. Sometimes the person is voluntary, and even though they don't meet the involuntary civil commitment criteria, we're going to follow that person and make sure that they receive the care by admitting themselves voluntarily. If that's what they choose, that's the level of care that they need, and that's the disposition that is made. Okay. If the TDO, though, is supported, then we refer to either a local or a state hospital, state psychiatric hospital. Again, because of COVID, everybody has to have medical clearance. The ECO timeframe is usually 8 hours, but with the medical clearance, of course, unfortunately, our officers are aware, it does take a little bit longer than that. And in the state of Virginia, there is, under the TDO, the accepting physician must agree with the medical clearance of the ED doctor or the referring physician. So sometimes there is that doc-to-doc phone call that takes place. because one doctor might think that their labs are a little more complicated and they're not able to admit the person, while the ED doctor is saying, no, they're medically cleared. So they do have that conversation, and that all occurs under custody if that's how it started. So we do refer to a temporary detention facility. Local hospitals in Virginia, they do admit people. They most certainly do, whether they're insured or whether they're uninsured. It's usually more about the acuity of the person, or perhaps, again, some discrepancy regarding medical clearance and so forth, or whether or not hospitals are full, because we all know local psychiatric hospitals, there are beds that are needed in Virginia. Virginia code requires that the petitioner also be notified of the disposition under the ECO and the outcome and any follow-up civil commitment information. So if they were the petitioner, for the ECO, the emergency custody order, and we support a TDO, then we're going to go ahead and contact the petitioner and let them know what hospital has accepted them and when the civil commitment hearing is. Most times now, the civil commitment hearing is being held by phone or telehealth, so by video. But we do allow them to participate. And of course, under the Code of Virginia, if someone is concerned that the disposition, they disagree with our disposition in emergency services, they have the right to appeal to a Virginia magistrate who could overturn the emergency services disposition and still order that TDO. It is the magistrate in Virginia that issues emergency custody orders and temporary detention orders. However, they rely on the information that we give them in emergency services as the certified pre-admission screening clinician. So some information down here at the bottom of the screen talks about total numbers of assessments during 2019 and 2020. So over 2,500 assessments, only 1,200 of them were TDOs. We supported a temporary detention order, so only half of that was supported for a TDO. Other folks were seen and followed up for community services. So that's actually pretty good. We're not TDOing everybody. We're looking at that person's individual rights. And again, looking to see if there's a least restrictive alternative, because we're required to by code to make sure that if there is a least restrictive alternative and we can develop that viable safety plan that's person-centered, we're going to go ahead and do that. ECOs, over 1,000 ECOs were issued. You can see the breakdown. 35% were judicial or magistrate issued by a magistrate, but 65% were actually officers in the community that saw something that led them to believe that the person needed to be evaluated by emergency services. So there's your total number of assessments for last year. Other key roles that emergency services clinicians play, again, we're the civil court liaison for TDO in Virginia Beach. So if somebody gets detained to Virginia Beach Psych or to Centera Behavioral Health Unit, we act as that court liaison, and we're required to represent the pre-admission screening at court. We go ahead and we facilitate that hearing. We do not work for the hospital. We have no vested interest and financial interest in that hospital, but we do represent the pre-admission screening, and we do help to coordinate the court. Again, we also provide referrals to other agencies if we find that the person needs additional services that maybe we don't have in our Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. They might just need food stamps. They might need SAP benefits. They may need housing assistance or financial assistance. So they may not need mental health services, but they certainly have other stressors that lead them to be into crisis. We're going to make sure that we refer them to the appropriate agency. A partnership with CIT has been invaluable. And you can see our clinician there, Lauren, is in the middle, the officers, and that's taken right outside of Virginia Beach site. We also provide training for human services staff, crisis intervention training, non-clinical training, just training for people, de-escalation training. So if they need a little bit more, they want education on mental health, we're going to see if we can go ahead and provide that internally and as well to external stakeholders, other agencies. Other crisis services, as I mentioned, the two big ones in our area, again, is that community crisis stabilization and our partnership now with police, and then, of course, residential crisis stabilization. At the bottom are two additional crisis stabilization centers. One is Tidewater Drive. They're currently offline due to COVID, and they're located in Norfolk. But there's also Regional Crisis Stabilization Unit, and they're located in Hampton. But we're fortunate because we have one right here in Virginia Beach. The goal of crisis stabilization, again, is to keep people in the community and work with them. We recognize that people are in crisis. We may need to mobilize resources, but we are trying to work with them. Not everybody needs to be under custody. Not everybody needs to be involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility. And I can tell you that we have an array of services in Virginia Beach. We're most fortunate, and that we have alternatives to incarceration or hospitalization if we can manage that safety plan. So we're very fortunate indeed. The other thing that we're fortunate about is we have good stakeholders here in Virginia Beach, and we're able to link immediately with other program supervisors and arrange for services for folks. We recognize that involuntary hospitalization can be traumatic for people. So working with them in the least restrictive alternative, it seems to help them follow through with outpatient services and other services versus maybe seeing somebody that's been TDO'd 17 times. So they're more resistant to follow up because they believe that all the follow-up services will ultimately lead to involuntary hospitalization. So just some services up there. I'm going to go ahead and read them. Some of them, as our day programs right now, are on hold because of COVID. But when COVID is said and done, or we're able to lessen our restrictions, we're really fortunate to have all of these services indeed.
So leaning forward, basically what our goal is at this point is our single point access. It's kind of something that we would like to see accomplished sometime soon. It is the way that it is leaning, and Cheryl can attest to it as Step Virginia. This is what they are pushing for. And then what this is really just one location where everything can take place. The wraparound services, the evaluation, the medical clearance, the medical screening, everything is just a one-stop shop instead of directing these individuals all over the city to receive these services. It's just a central point of location for everybody.
That's correct. And we're more, with this mobile crisis stabilization program, in conjunction with our mobile CoResponder team, we're really a roving receiving center, if you will. Some states have centers that are built. Arizona, California, Washington, they have centers where officers just stop, drop, and roll and drop the person that has a mental health disorder to an array of mental health clinicians and substance use clinicians and peers. Another thing I did not mention and go into a whole lot of detail with is we're going to have a peer recovery specialist also riding with police officers. And this is something in Virginia Beach we're most proud of. We've had one of our peers work with us for over 3 years. He's well known in the community. And having somebody with lived mental illness or substance use disorder talking to another individual in crisis is huge. Because again, it's more about trying to get the services to the person and let them know that help is available. And that if I don't understand them as a clinician, or maybe they feel an officer doesn't understand them because they're police officers, they're more likely to interact with a peer recovery specialist.
The next slide is just our contact information. If you guys have further questions or inquiries, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be able to at least, if not provide you the correct answer, we'll get you the correct answer and respond back to this as quickly as we can. We appreciate your guys' time. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to present and kind of give you guys an update on where we're at and where we kind of want to go as a city.
So, Ms. Sylvia, I'd like to thank Sergeant Gordon and Cheryl for offering this very comprehensive and informative presentation. And I think it would be appropriate to open up the floor for questions. If there are any questions that the presentation prompted, James and Cheryl will be happy to answer them.
Yes, if you have any questions, please raise your virtual hand, and I see some up already. Commissioner Rivera, your mic is now open.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me say that I'm very happy and proud of the service that CIT provides, and that we're able to offer that cases that perhaps the typical police officer couldn't handle. I have a couple of questions. Do I understand that that at least one CIT officer would be at a particular situation where their services might be needed, or do they have to be called in after the fact, after the assessment is made? And how long would it take a person to arrive that is CIT qualified?
So it's really yes to both answers. So the way that it works is that We have over half of our patrol force that is CIT 40 certified. So the likelihood of somebody being CIT certified that is working, that is on that particular zone and shift, it's high. Or their zone partner that is responding to that call, it will probably be CIT certified. But also we have in our policy that's built in that anybody that is CIT certified has pretty much free reign of the entire city if they are needed. So in the instance in which a call for service goes out, we send 2 officers to all of our CIT related cases. The likelihood of one of them being CIT 40 certified is high, and even if they're not, that goes broadcasted across the precinct. So everybody in the precinct is aware that these 2 officers are going to this CIT related call. What that prompts, any individual officer that is CIT 40 certified can start heading that way and has the authority to head that way and take the lead on that case as soon as they arrive. So the initial is we want to respond as quick as we can, but we also want to make sure that we provide the right services at the right time and the most qualified individuals to deal with that situation. In addition to that, we also have our CIT supplemental folks that are all CIT certified, and that's what they're doing. If they're listening for those calls for service to start heading in that direction to take lead on those cases. And we also have our MCRT team who is also activated, and that's where the clinician is with the CIT 40 trained officer, and they respond and they will take the lead on that case and start that in the field assessment.
Okay, and how do you handle persons that might not be English speaking?
So we can transition that with the language line through dispatch, and we can try to communicate that way with them, especially if they're receptive and open to that communication. And we also have several language specialist officers on our department that we can call for, not only within the precinct, but across precinct boundaries, across the entire city, to see if there is an individual officer that speaks that particular language. And if not, then we'll try to default to the language line and try to communicate with that through dispatch. Is trying to get a translator on the line to at least be able to effectively communicate with the individual.
My compliments to all of you. Thank you so much for your service.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rivera. Okay, I see a virtual hand up by Commissioner Amberman. Commissioner Amberman, your mic is now open.
Thank you. I wanted to voice, just like Commissioner Rivera, my appreciation for the outstanding services and the great presentation that we received. The request that I would have is that if you could please share the PowerPoint presentation with all of us, that would be appreciated. And then I have a question in regards to, I saw there that there were like at least 220 people that refused services. How do the services that are refused, do they develop into some arrests? Do you mind expanding on that? And then my second question is, I know that recently during the latest General Assembly session, there was some funds dedicated to educational capabilities of law enforcement. And I wanted to ask if within that, are there any opportunities for the city of Virginia Beach to benefit them, the services that we receive from those funds? Thank you.
So for the individuals that refuse the services, so we have certain criteria where we are able, as law enforcement, able to intervene with the individual and restrict their civil liberties. But they have to meet those qualifications. So in order for us to forcefully take somebody into services, they have to meet one of 3 criteria. They either have to be homicidal, suicidal, or inability to care for themselves. If they don't meet any of those 3 services, that doesn't mean that we just turn our back and walk away. These are those instances where we bring emergency services in and we start talking to them about everything that is available to them. They may not be at that crisis point where we can involuntarily commit them, but we can recognize that they do need some sort of services before they get to that level. So then that's where we try those wraparound services. We try to reach out the same-day access programs and things like that with emergency services and try to encourage them to take part in these. But again, at the end of the day, it's really a decision that they have to make as an individual because we don't have the legal authority to force them into those services. So we provide those services to them. And that's another benefit of the post-crisis follow-up team is those individuals that may refuse services today may be more receptible tomorrow or the next day. And that's something that we'll lead back out and say, hey, did you give it any more thought? Is there anything that we can help you with? If you need help filling out the paperwork or getting you to these appointments, we can facilitate that for you. We want to try to assist you in anything we can. And again, that's really going to be led by emergency services, but obviously with the support of the police department. And then as far as the benefit goes to of the funding that is available and that's been presented, obviously we are always trying to be at the forefront of training in what we provide, and not only to ourselves, but we open it up to the region as well. So similar to the advanced training that we put on last year, that is additional information or additional things that we can do to provide to our officers, as well as other officers within the region, as well as emergency services workers. So it would benefit, and we could find some use for it if it was provided.
Yes, and I wanted to basically, as you know, we always submit issues to the General Assembly, and I just wanted to make sure that the funding reaches our city. And I know, because I was a member of the task force for the community colleges across Virginia, and I know that there was approval for funding for those institutions. But I know that some cities provide their own training as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we are not discriminated with the funding, and that our city is supported. You know what I'm saying? And if we can be helpful in any way, well, we need to hear what opportunities are there to reinforce and support, our Virginia Beach Police Department.
We are very fortunate as a city, just because of the resources that are available to us, and that we do take CIT very seriously, and we're very proactive in it. And I think, yes, we could benefit from it. I don't know how much there is or how they're allocating that, and they may look at the cities that may not have as much and could benefit more. So obviously, if it's asked or provided for us, we'll definitely find a use for it.
And we've been successful in the past to receive grant funding that helps sustain our training, as well as offer regional training. So there's some opportunities, and we'll have to examine what was recently passed in the General Assembly budget.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Amberman. I see a virtual hand up by Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Stevens, your mic is now open.
Thank you, gentlemen, for all you do. I've had the opportunity to request officer with the training, and it comes to a question in mind, because I'm aware of what's going on, how many people don't know this is out there and that somebody might need to request one of these officers. And the second, just recently, I've had to make a call for somebody who had done something, and the fire department showed up first. Didn't hear where they are certified or trained in this, and with them the first responder at the time to a crisis like this, is there any plans on having them certified, be part of this program?
So actually, we just got done training, or we welcomed them into our training. You're more than welcome to attend any of our CIT 40-hour trainings. We brought in EMS, and we just put on our first EMS class. And as a result of that, we have been reached out to by the fire department, inquiring about sending some of their folks as well. So it's something that's catching on, and I can foresee us expanding into the fire department as well. It's not because we're not willing or wanting. It's just a matter of if the fire department feels that it's a need. As things are changing, I think they are recognizing more of the need, and they're going to be more willing. And in the foreseeable future, we'll probably be assisting them as well, developing their own curriculum for their program.
Yeah, because I saw a big difference between the firemen, how they were handling the person versus when your officers showed up. And you can see the training that your officers have, and it's very important when you're dealing with this type of situation. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stevens. I don't see any more virtual hands up, but I want to check with Commissioner.
Teresa.
Oh, Teresa. Okay, Commissioner Stanley, your mic is now open.
Yes, I too want to thank and commend Virginia Beach Police Department, as well as the collaborative partners. To follow up on Commissioner Stevens' concern, when I wondered about the dispatchers as far as taking the calls. When people, until people get real familiar, it's very hard for them to be in a crisis asking for CIT officers, even if they know that those things exist. especially when they're first facing mental health crisis in their families. So are the dispatchers sort of trained to know that it is that kind of call? And then the second, how is that handled then so that the right officers are sent? And then the follow-up to that was, with the pandemic, have you all seen a real uptick in these calls for service?
So for the first question, for ECCS, they are trained. ECCS does a great job with the recognition of just kind of the responses that they get from the questions that they're asking if the individual themselves are calling, or particularly if a citizen is calling or family member is calling. They're asking those key questions, and they recognize it, even whether it's the individual themselves or a family member. Once they recognize it and they believe that it is impossible that it's a CIT-related call, that triggers their response. And what that does is they send out a tone to that entire precinct, and it gets broadcasted over the radio where that call for service is and that it's possibly CIT related. Once the officers get there, it may not be CIT related, or it may, but they err on the side of caution. If they have a belief that it is even remotely possible, they're going to broadcast it as if it is. That way we make sure that we do get the correct resources to them. And then the second part of your question was in reference to
the pandemic and the uptick.
So the numbers are probably slightly higher, and Cheryl will probably be able to speak a little bit more to that as far as the numbers being higher or lower. They have not gone down, I can tell you that, but they are probably right on course, maybe slightly higher. What we have seen is an increase in wait time, though, at the hospital in the medical clearance, and waiting in the hospital days with the individual, waiting for test results, waiting for admissions into hospitals, even after the test results come in. That's really what we've seen as an increase in the recent times, is days wait in the hospital, waiting for the receiving facility to accept them.
Thank you, because I just know we're hearing it in community that the stressors on families really are, having an impact. So I know that that's a challenge for you all on both ends.
So thank you for asking about that, Teresa. I'm going to ask James to talk about a very timely situation where we had a young person that we had in our care for literally days. And I think it's appropriate to highlight this circumstances for a couple of reasons. One, it will speak to the total time on tasks that the officers have to commit. It'll speak to some of our alternate strategies. But finally, I think it would help to illuminate the situation if the HRC can take some of these details and ultimately advocate for improvement in the overall process. We all know after the pre-deeds incident, there was some improved General Assembly legislation, and that was prompted by a catastrophic incident. I think the circumstance I'm going to ask James to speak to would also be illustrative of a need that is probably long overdue. It's been talked about, but there's more attention needs to be given.
So we recently had a couple of cases. Obviously, with the COVID, when it first hit, tests were taking 24 to 48 hours to come back. Testing has improved, and that piece of the medical clearance has improved dramatically. We can normally get a medical clearance from a COVID test in about 6 hours now. And this is post ECO. So we've already been with them for 8 hours, and now we're starting on a TDO. And the medical clearance piece for the COVID test now is about 6 hours, which officers understand. What they're having a hard time with is after that and the delay. And it's not just the officers, it's the individual that's in crisis. So we have an individual that's in crisis that needs mental health treatment, and needs to be in a receiving facility for an extended period of time, and we're delaying that by no fault of officers. Where this comes in is the receiving facilities not willing to take them. So the Cree-Deeds Act was a great piece of legislation which basically created all of these receiving facilities to have a bed registry, to be able to list what beds they have available and what beds they have full. Unfortunately, The hospitals look at that and they have the list and they're in compliance with that list, whether it's updated or not updated. If emergency services makes these calls for these hospitals, they may have 3 beds available, but they also have the ability to say, who is the patient? What is their situation? No, I'm not taking that person without any just cause. And then emergency services is left calling the next hospital and the next hospital and the next hospital. So they can refuse these individuals who are in need of services, even though that they have beds available, which is problematic. This individual is in crisis and they need that mental health treatment, and they're having to sit in an emergency room where they're not getting mental health treatment from the police officers, they're not getting mental health treatment from the emergency room personnel, and their time that they're supposed to be evaluated under the TDO is being spent in emergency rooms without receiving the services that the code was designed for them to receive. And it's a little frustrating for the individual that's in crisis because now they're in a hospital and they're still not receiving help. And it's been days. We had a juvenile that we were with for upwards of 4 days in the ER. And then we had another male that we were with for over 3 days in the ER. And the TDO is only good for 72 hours for adults and 96 hours for juveniles. So of that 72 hours, they're spending 3 days in the hospital. They're really not receiving the mental health treatment that the code was designed for them to do. So what we would really like to kind of improve this process is try to have some sort of accountability for these receiving facilities to accept these patients if they have the bed, instead of having the ability to just deny them for whatever reason that they wish. And really what that does is that puts a lot of extra strain on the state hospitals, which is the bed of last resort. So if all of these for-profit hospitals say no, 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 then all of these individuals have to go to the state hospital. Well, the state hospital only has so many beds. And then when they're full, they can't take anybody else because they have to have the staff and the personnel to take them. So then the waiting list begins and we begin sitting in the ERs for literally days with these individuals who are in crisis. They're not walking in and needing, a flu shot. They're in crisis. They need that mental health treatment, and it's upsetting from me as an individual who promotes this and teaches this, is that if I walk into a hospital with a broken arm, that hospital has to treat me. But if I walk in and there's something wrong in my mental status, the hospital just reserve the right to refuse to treat me. And it's left to the state hospital, and then it's the expanded wait time. And Cheryl, if you want to add in on anything on that.
Absolutely, because the way the code is written in Virginia, if they're under custody and we can't find a bed, they do end up more often than not looking to the bed of last resort, the Craven legislation, the state hospital. But there are many private hospitals in Virginia, and again, they're not mandated by the code. They do not have to accept the patient. Even if that patient walks in to their facility, they have the right to refuse treatment. And so that's a problem. And I know that we've looked at this, and of course, there's been other things pending, but have, of course, because with the Virginia Healthcare and Hospital Association, and I know the VACSB, that we've been looking at things to see what can be done about that. But absolutely, in other states, if you walk into the ED and you have a psych bed, you're a med-surg facility, you have a psychiatric unit attached to your ED, you have to admit the patient if you receive funding, receive federal or state funding. And hospitals here don't have that. They don't have to do that. So again, we're always looking to the state hospitals. State hospitals are full because, again, they're looking at forensic. A lot of patients that are in the jails are receiving emergency treatment because of other cases that have come up. You all know that. And they must admit that patient to the state hospital to receive emergency treatment if they're in the jail. So again, the state hospitals are kind of, stuck. So patients do end up spending a lot of time.
I really appreciate you expanding on that concern, and I feel like our mental health task force, of which I'm a member, I know Tom McCubine's on, that is something that is a human rights issue because healthcare includes mental health care, and if somebody is being withheld that treatment, that's something that we all should be very concerned about. So I would. As a commissioner, like to just go on record saying that I think that is a great concern, and I appreciate you giving us the information so that we're knowledgeable. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley. I have a virtual hand up by Councilman Bellucci. Councilman Bellucci, your mic is now open.
Great. Good evening. It's good to see everyone. Thank you to all the folks from the police department for this presentation and for the work that you do with CIT in this issue. I have a question about the mobile co-responder team, partly to gather some information and then partly also to raise this issue with the members of the Mental Health Task Force and Human Rights Commission. The mobile co-responder team, as many of you know, is a partnership where mental health professionals respond with police officers. And when this occurs, and I think this was covered in the presentation, although I had to take a call, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating something, but it results in an almost 90% reduction in arrests when there's a mental health crisis occurring. So it's a great program. And many of you may know that the program was scheduled to be expanded in this year's fiscal 2021 budget, but the expansion was reduced as a result of the reductions that had to occur because of COVID. So my question for Deputy Chief Zuccaro and the folks from the police department is, I wonder if you could expand upon a little further about the capacity of the mobile co-responder team and describe where we currently are and what that expansion would look like if it were funded, and sort of what your position is on the urgency or necessity of moving forward with that expansion potentially in this fiscal year as we're considering formulating the budget.
We'd be happy to, and I'd ask James to fill in some of the gaps that we may have touched on while you took your phone call, but James?
Yes, sir. So currently we're set up Monday through Friday, and we field it from about 12 to 10 p.m. And that's with one clinician and one officer. We're also running our supplemental folks with officers that are trained to respond as well, but we only have one clinician at that point. The expansion would allow us to expand not only our hours, but our clinicians and our availability throughout the day and into the weekends as well. Right now, we target the group based on what is data driven on our highest call volume and where we can make the most impact with the limited resources that we have. So if it is funded, we would be able to expand our coverage and also expand the amount of actual co-responders that are available to these calls for service. Oftentimes, because of the amount of calls that we have go out, an MCRT unit will be on one call but can't respond to the other call because they're still working that one particular call. So that call will then go to a CIT trained officer to respond to and handle, but they don't get that same level of intervention on scene because they don't have the mobile co-responder with them that can set up those outside services right then and there. So they're left with the decision of, are they okay enough to leave, or do I have to take them under, judicial custody to take them into the magistrates, or not the magistrates, but the clinician's office to have the clinicians evaluate them. So it really expand upon our ability to see more people in the field and expand the hours of coverage. Right now, our midnight and overnight crew doesn't benefit too much from this because of where the data tells us we can be most effective with our limited resources. So unfortunately, anything that happens over or past 10 p.m., it's the officers that are going to be with them the entire time. And they do a great job, but it would be extremely beneficial if they had that added resource available to them.
If I could just ask a quick follow-up, I appreciate that. And I know the CIT officers do a great job. It's just that it seems to me the mobile co-responder team would offer even more care, more focus, and it sounds like you agree. Could you describe, without presenting any data, just a really high-level look at what's the gap? In other words, could you describe anywhere, say, we receive a lot of calls that would qualify for mobile co-responder team, but we're just not able to send them on the basis that we don't have enough staff. I mean, is it a lot? Is it a little? Are you meeting, roughly? I mean, I know I'm said don't present data, but are you meeting a third of the calls that you could meet with mobile co-responder team, or 20% or 90%? I mean, any idea, kind of what the capacity currently is and what that expansion would represent in terms of service?
So right now we have, approximately 1,100 calls that we were able to respond to with our NCRT out of 3,800 calls that were CIT related. So if you look at that, it's probably we're tackling probably a little over a third or right at a third of the calls for service. And by expanding the unit, we would be able to reach out and target and help that many more based on whatever is funded or whatever is approved as far as the expansion.
Well, thank you very much. And I just, I'm planning to be an advocate for funding the expansion of the mobile co-responder team in this fiscal year budget. And I'm hopeful that the members of the Human Rights Commission will join me in voicing their support to council for the need to fully fund the mobile co-responder team expansion. Thank you.
We appreciate that, Councilman Belushi.
Thank you, Councilman Bellucci. I have I see Commissioner Cubine has her real hand up. So hold for one moment. Commissioner Cubine, your mic is open.
Thank you. This was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. I wanted to mention STEP, Virginia. A couple of people, someone did mention it, and Michael was asking about funding. And part of the funding, if it ever comes through, and this is something the Mental Health Task Force has been working on for several years now. The recommendation was for 32 million plus funding to complete the STEP, Virginia, that would provide comprehensive mental health services with those 9 key services. And part of that funding would be for mobile crisis. And then that's when, and Michael mentioned that during the spring, that money was taken off the budget because of the COVID problems and financial problems. In the special session of the General Assembly, it's starting, I think, in August, they put the money back in for STEP Virginia, and it's over $32 million, but there's concern that there's not really enough to cover the services. But nonetheless, the special budget people in the special session did put it back in. They sent that budget to the governor to consider, whether he will accept that, because his budget that he presented early was actually less funds and was not including that 32 million. And of course, that will not be in effect until 2022 as it stands now. I got a lot of my information from the VACSB, and I think someone else mentioned that. That's the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards, and they really keep right up to date on what the legislative issues are and the funding. And I've been in communication with them today, in fact. So the hope is that this 32 million that is in the budget for 2022 will stay, and that some of these services that have not been funded will be funded. Same day access, primary screening were funded completely, but outpatient services even were not completely funded. And if you have a backup even to get into treatment, that's a problem. And Virginia right now, in fact, is rated 41, I believe it is, in access to treatment, just access to treatment. So we really need to do a lot of strong advocating for this funding to be passed, so that we can get the comprehensive services, mental health services we need in the community. And that would include some more money, more funding for crisis services.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, Commissioner Cubine. Just 1 second, Chair Neer Strickland. I also want to make sure that Commissioner Khaled doesn't have any questions or anything to add to the discussion. Since he's back on the phone, he's been bouncing back and forth. So let me check and see. Commissioner Khaled, did you have any questions or comments to make on the presentation?
Nope, all good. Enjoyed listening to it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Khaled. Okay, and I don't see any more virtual hands. So back to you, Chair Neer Strickland.
Yes, thank you for the excellent. It's very late, but I just have one quick question that I think you can answer, and that's when you said the patients were waiting in the ER, waiting in the ER for 3 to 4 days. Are you talking about in the lobby, or do they have a bed in the actual ER?
Well, it depends. In most cases, they do have a bed. So if it's depending on where they're at. So the juvenile was at CHKD, and then the adult was at Virginia Beach General Hospital. So they do have a bed area, but they're not receiving the mental health treatment and services that they need for that amount of days. And even if they're, if you think about it in retrospective of just anyone going to the ER for any illness, as we wait there for hours, we become frustrated. And these individuals are in crisis, are having to wait days before they actually go to the facility to receive the treatment that they need.
Okay, thank you. It's excellent presentation. I thank everyone for presenting that to us. And I understand Billy will be our new liaison. Welcome. And Deputy Chief Carl, you will be with us next month.
I'll have to check my schedule, but I do want to add, earlier someone asked about receiving a copy of the presentation. What we'll do is we'll provide it to you in a PDF format, and I'll send it to Miss Dominique.
Sounds good.
So try and fit us into your schedule if you will, please. Let us know. December 31st will be your last day. Is that correct?
It'll be my last official day with the city, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll miss you, but onward and upward. I'm sorry that it took so long, and for you, the new members, this is usually what happens. We need the information, and we have presentations, and most of our work is done, what I call it, in the field and in committee. So does anyone have something from their either committee or liaison that they absolutely need to report, unless you want to go past 6 o'clock? If you can share it by email, or is there anyone that has to speak on anything?
I have a virtual hand up by Vice Chair Gencott. Vice Chair Gencott, your mic is open.
Thank you. 2 quick statistics. I've been tracking the COVID stats from the VDH, and you all can read them and interpret whatever is important to you. But I wanted to point out that the age range, 45% of our Virginia Beach cases are age 20 through 39. That's 45%. And 51% of our cases in Virginia Beach have been minorities. And that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Gencott. Okay, I don't see any other virtual hands up.
Okay, at 7 o'clock, we have the pass-throughs round table. Everyone got a link to it. If you can join us, please join at 7. And I'm sorry that we ran out of time for our reports. The only thing I have to say is that I keep sending emails. Whatever I know, you get through email. And if you have any questions, just please call or ask now if you have any questions. But otherwise, it is 5 minutes till 6. And
oh, I have a virtual hand up by Commissioner Amberman. Commissioner Amberman, your mic is open. Oh, it's open now. Oh, let me open it. There you go. You're good. Commissioner Amberman?
Thank you, sir. And yes, and we received a concerning email in regards to the IRP, and I was wondering if we can include that topic at the next law enforcement committee meeting, please.
Yes, and I think that's an important part. I heard by rumor, I finally got hold of the email. It's public, so we were able to distribute it to everyone. And you can, as you read through it, you can see that it's going to be a hot topic.
I want to double check with Commissioner Callett, since he's on the phone, to make sure he doesn't have anything further to add to the meeting. So Commissioner Callett, your mic is open.
Yep, all good.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Commissioner Callett.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. And it's always good to see you. Next month, we have, I think our agenda is getting full, but if you have anything that you want to ask for, please do so.
I got a virtual hand up by Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Taylor, your mic is open.
Thank you. That RRP, that email that went out,
yes,
and yeah, the African American Roundtable is has forwarded which will, I think, is Rod still online?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think you got the same message too. He had a power outage, so he's trying to get back on, and I don't think he's been able to do that yet.
Yeah, Rod came to our last roundtable meeting. Just to give you a brief synopsis of a resolution that was going to be put forward to the city council for discussion, changing the IRP, the name of the, I think it's called IRP, Investigative Review Panel. They're going to change it to Citizen Review Panel.
Right.
And also the makeup of the board is going to be changed. And that's in alignment with the new, what the African American Roundtable put out. It's a makeup in the board. And that hasn't been discussed in how we going to make up the board. And I know we put Rod on the spot during the meeting, and the resolution that we wanted to be added. And I think, Rod, you said everything that we asked, it didn't have to be approved by the state legislators.
Rod's actually back on the line now. Rod, Commissioner Taylor was just discussing the last Mayor's African American Roundtable meeting.
Yes. I believe the mayor told me that he was going to call you, Ron, after that about the resolution. Did he not call you?
Yeah, we have, and he's going to go ahead and get with you in the stuff that we forwarded to you. Do you have it?
I received the email, but the last communication I had with the mayor was his thought that this was a decision for the city council. And he mentioned the proposal at a council meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was 3 weeks ago. And after he mentioned it, I believe Vice Mayor Wood spoke about a package of materials that he passed out that concerned him about some things that are going on in the community. So the bottom line is I take my direction from council, and if the city council asks me to draft something, then I will do what I'm told to do.
Yeah, and that's what I was alluding to. We spoke yesterday, and what we forwarded to you, he's going to ask you to put it in a resolution for discussion before council.
Okay.
I'll await his call.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I just want to make sure you have it, so when he said go ahead and do it, you don't have to scramble around wondering what we gave you.
I've got the email that you sent me the Sunday night after the Mayor's African American Roundtable. That was the Sunday night before the election. And I believe I can find the original letter from July.
Okay.
I'll look for that. And I'll have it when he contacts me.
Yeah, that's all I want to make sure you don't have to scramble around looking for it.
Okay.
If you've got that letter from July where you can easily forward it to me, that would save me some work.
Okay.
But if not, I'll try to find it.
Okay, I can do that for you.
And
Thank you.
Ron, I have one quick question. The email that I sent around about the citizens who are forming their own group, that has nothing to do with the mayor's African American Roundtable. Is that correct?
You referring that to me?
I am.
Yeah, that doesn't have nothing to do with us.
Okay.
The mayor shared that with me, and him and I had a discussion on that, and that's not linked to us. That's someone doing their own thing. Like my mom used to say down in Georgia, every pea got his own road.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for everybody for hanging in there. And I guess Morgan can't hear us, so we'll just.
She can hear us. She can hear us. Commissioner Ellis, your mic is unmuted now.
Yeah, I can hear you. I fixed it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I hope you got some of the presentation, and welcome.
I did. I got all of the presentation.
Okay, great. Very good. Any old business, new business, any announcements, any citizens' remarks?
We don't have any citizens on the call.
Okay. Well, if you can run get dinner, you might be able to make the 7 o'clock Pastors Roundtable. So, we'll be in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Meeting adjourned.
Bye, everyone.